and also diamine.com. So you can find great clothing, Diamine, beautiful hats like this at diamine.com, and the best supplements in the world for endurance athletes at cellsavers.org. My co-host, as always, the Chosen One, the Chosen One Bets at the Chosen One Bets. If you want to find him on social media, Joshua Choven, welcome, sir, and great to see you again. And I absolutely love what your salon did with your hair.
Yeah, that means a lot coming from such a great man like you, Pat. And we are obviously very respectful of all cultures everywhere. But I'll just say this: let the Jufro flow. Is that okay to
All
say?
right.
That's
There you
okay to say.
go. There you
Moving
go.
on.
I love it. I love it. So, I mean, I guess one thing you could color it, you could put some, highlights,
I could
something like that
do
in
the Sean
there.
O'Malley, maybe do the Sean O'Malley rainbow.
Well, no, don't go that far. You don't
Okay.
want to go that
Okay.
far. You don't want to
Okay.
ruin your credibility. But nonetheless, a couple blonde highlights would be really
Hey,
good.
it turned
And
Sean into $200 in his checking account to being about 5 million he's worth. So it worked out for him. So
yeah, because he can fight. He can fight. So
that's
look, you can bet. So you're going to have to fill your own bank account
Matt,
on
you are
that
on
one.
fire today. It's going to be a fun episode. I can already
All
tell.
right. So let's. I want to go to the news. Well, we got to cover last week. How'd the betting
Yeah.
go for you last week?
Yeah, the betting was quite good. I thought it was fairly lined up how we thought it would. You had Mike Malott. I don't really understand the line movement. That was maybe the only fight that didn't really went the opposite of the way I thought it would go. I
Sure.
thought Burns would put up more of a fight. I didn't necessarily think that I wasn't necessarily super confident he would win, but the line movement had made him much less of an underdog. Malott looked good though. Malott looked good standing and on the ground. And
Sure.
I think it was also Burns is on the far downside of his career. But credit to Mike Malott, credit to Winnipeg for putting on a good event. And I'm scrolling through here. It wasn't really a blow me away card like the Jerry Alberg, Hockett, Blades card we had last week. It felt like we were on a speeding train going 120 miles an hour, and then we slowed down a little bit, but still a perfectly fine card. And then we go to the UFC Apex tomorrow, kind of doing our rounds before the big pay per view again, which is Sean Strickland, Chimaev. Not to get ahead of ourselves, it's a good card this week, but that card's shaping up to be maybe the best card of the year.
Yes. And so, by judging by how you did last week, will the lights and water stay on at the Chauvin household?
They will. They will. As you see, lights are on, and I can afford to wash my hair with very nice shampoo. So yeah,
Yes. Yes, you
we're
can.
doing we're doing
All
okay
right.
over here, Pat.
All right. Moving on to the news. Strickland having some choice words for Kamzat. His social media post talking about when somebody asked how he planned on winning against Kamzat, and it was use bacon grease, which is a pretty offensive thing to say to number one, a follower of Islam, but a guy that is, well, Kamzat's a pretty scary cat. So,
Yeah,
I mean, Strickland is obviously a very tough guy, has won some huge, huge fights. Rugged, tough guy. Kamzat, I don't know if do you really want to fuel the fire with a guy like Kamzat that can wrestle as good as he can, and you know, offending him at that level is just going to, well, extremes maybe.
yeah. I think I know what Strickland's doing. You got to give him credit on the insult. It's a double barbed insult. He's able to mock the fact that Kamzat is very reliant on wrestling. He's like, I'm gonna oil up, a la. I know that there's been a couple fights where guys have been accused of. Did you run into anything like that where guys were getting Vaseline rubbed on them in between rounds? I know that
No,
GSP was
the
accused of that. I don't know if ever, but I know
the
that happened
technique,
maybe
the,
back.
the old school technique for the guys that were strikers would be earlier in the day, lather themselves up in baby oil, and then you would towel it off, and then you would come into the ring somewhat feeling normal, and then when you'd start sweating like crazy, and they would towel off right before they'd come into the cage, and then when you started to perspire, the baby oil would come out of your pores and then you'd become a grease pig. And so that's basically what Strickland's saying with the double whammy, saying I'm going to grease myself up. One, so you can't wrestle with me very well, and I can escape, you holding me down. And two, I am going to be a grease pig.
Yeah, and the thing is, Pat, you can joke with a lot of people about a lot of things, and credit to the Eastern Europeans, the Muslims out there, the Muslims living in the mountains. They make some very tough fighters, some very mentally tough individuals. They don't do self-deprecating humor very well. They can't laugh at themselves, especially when you talk about their faith or their family. It's not funny to them, and they have
Right.
zero tolerance for games. This reminds me a little bit of the Khabib Conor fight. Dana already said they're going to have triple the security of what they already have. I will say this, Pat, then I'll throw it to you. In a world where we're just coming off the Josh Hockett thing, which was obviously an act. He's actually a pretty nice, humble guy, so it's just an act to make money. It's almost refreshing that we have some MMA drama that seems very real. Kamzat's not effing around, and I think that's kind of cool in a world where we're always asking, is it real or not? I think it's real here.
Yeah, no, this isn't really what. Well, maybe from Strickland it's theater, but on the other side, the receiving end, it's no longer theater. You insulted his religion. Okay, moving on to big news: Gable Stevenson signing with the UFC. I know a lot of people have already announced this, but we can analyze it and break it down and kind of. So, give me your thoughts. It's a huge signing. A blue chip guy coming in like that, Olympian, Olympic gold medalist, numerous time NCAA champion, and a guy of that size having the athleticism that he does, you don't find monsters like this every other day. It just doesn't happen. So
not only has he been announced as joining the UFC, Pat, a lot of people have already announced him as the UFC heavyweight champion. And I think that's maybe a little bit putting the cart in front of the horse. But I wanted to get your take. I mean, how would you rate Gable Stevenson as an MMA prospect? Is he a full-blown A+, 10 out of 10? Because he's already teamed up with John Jones, which is a good sign. But we've seen a guy like Bo Nickel, who was supposed to be a blue-chip prospect, have some ups and downs. Will we see that for Gable Stevenson, or is it straight to the title?
well, I think given the weight division, the fact that not insulting the heavyweight division in general, but it's right now not the strongest it's ever been. It's not like you've got a Fedor Emelianenko and a Prime Overeem and a lot of these monsters that used to be in the heavyweight division, certainly in like Pride back in the day. That's a totally different a totally different era, and those guys were pretty scary cats to say the least. So yeah, he's coming in. I mean, I don't know what his contract was, but it had to be for a good amount of money to say the least. And if it comes down to his endurance. He proved he broke mentally and endurance wise in the NCAA championship, where he lost that match. That was like, and he probably learned a hard lesson in that one because he had steamrolled through most competition in wrestling, obviously fairly easy, not always, but most of the time. He's a different level athlete, but the gas tank is the most important part, along with, of course, technique. So if he's preparing correctly, working that endurance side of things, he's going to have the technique. He's got the athleticism. He's gonna trample the vast majority of the heavyweight division pretty easily, I think.
I want to get your take on something, then we'll move on to our other news piece. They say with wrestlers, like blue chip, really good wrestlers, some of them don't like to be punched in the face. Some of them have just incredible striking that within 6-7 months that they pick up just because they're a freak athlete. You trained some of the best, brother, down there in Bettendorf, Iowa. Talk about how you dealt with that, because I imagine you had both kinds, guys who just welcome being punched in the face, or guys that are like, whoa, this is I didn't get punched in the face when I was wrestling at University of Minnesota. How did you deal with that as a coach?
Yeah, I think it's just, I don't know. There's some sort of fiber within somebody. Sometimes it's their childhood was a little tougher. They're used to getting, whether they got hit a lot, all that sort of stuff. Been in a lot of street fights, propensity for just to throw. They're that mentality, and it also comes down to the style of wrestling. Certain wrestlers that are kind of not the super athletic, not the super fast, guys that can hit a low single leg from a distance type explosiveness and speed. Sometimes it's pretty hard to teach them footwork, being nimble, all that sort of stuff, because they're the guy that always has to kind of be plodding and wearing you out style wrestling.
Oh yeah.
Where a Gable Stevenson, he can do that, but he can also shoot a low single from 10 feet away because he's a good enough athlete, which is going to give heavyweights an absolute nightmare. His speed and so just different things. So yeah, it just depends on the athlete. And if I were to go back into coaching, I would go to the NCAAs and I would set up a recruiting table for the guys that took sixth, fifth, third, didn't win the championship, still have hunger, have something to prove, and they have the style that makes sense for, coaching, a guy into a world title position or a world title in MMA. I would look for a specific athlete.
I love that. Gable Stevenson will be UFC heavyweight champion 2 years from now. True or false?
True. If his endurance is there, that's the one
All
thing.
right. I love it.
It'll come down to his endurance. So, all right. So you also wanted to talk about just talking about we have this Legends Corner thing. So
Yes.
we want to talk a little bit about. Did you have anybody you wanted to talk about a little bit at all?
I think I was going to talk about Khabib Nurmagomedov. We talked about the Eastern Europeans. Khabib, I think, for some reason, is somehow underrated, despite never losing in the octagon. 29-0 in MMA in general. About half of that was in the UFC. He never bled in the octagon, and I think that for some reason wrestlers are aging poorly, maybe even being worked out of the UFC a little bit. I'll always be a Khabib forever guy, not only for his fighting pedigree, but he reminds me of you in a lot of ways. He was a pioneer over there in Eastern Europe, and he started a whole movement of Dagestani fighters in the UFC, where now we've had 4 or 5 Dagestani world champions. I mean, just all around, I think he's the definition of what a great fighter and a great representative of mixed martial arts is.
I agree with you there. I've got a lot of respect for him, and going 29-0 in MMA, winning a world title, a UFC title, and defending the title as many times as he
Multiple
did is,
times. Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible what he did. So yeah, but I was going to just because combat sports in general, and this goes back, for anybody that hears this that's fairly young, that's not familiar with Muay Thai and Muay Thai world champions and foreigners not from that region of the world. The first ones to go there from the Netherlands, like the Netherlands were known, those fighters were known for being able to go into Thailand, win world titles, win stadium championships, things like that. And Ramon Decker comes to mind. He was 186 and 36 overall. So 186 and 36 is an incredible record in Muay Thai, because Muay Thai, those guys are fighting a lot. And at the top, the top 10 guys in the world are just devastating strikers, like terrifying. An MMA guy having to do an MMA match with a top 10 guy in Muay Thai, in a Muay Thai match is like, it doesn't end up a pretty situation. And when I was calling lion fight matches, Muay Thai fights, for a couple of years, to say the least, the MMA guys that went into Muay Thai on those cards, most of the time their night ended with a spinning elbow and a fractured skull. I mean, literally, they got devoured, almost all of them. So, but Ramon Decker's a legend, 8-time world champion. Unfortunately, he passed away. I think it was in 2013, at the age of 43. But look up Ramon Decker and watch his highlights. The most terrifying Muay Thai striker, probably, at least top 3 in the world ever. He was just absolutely terrifying guy. So, yeah, ode to Ramon Decker.
Yeah. And let me ask you this, and then we'll get into the fights for this week. Kind of the inverse of the question I asked you earlier, brother. I've been impressed with these kickboxing guys like Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira, many others. Jiri Prohaska was mostly a kickboxing guy, but coming over to MMA. they have really handled the issue was always, well, they could strike, but you can't strike when I'm holding you down on the grounds. They've been pretty adept at learning the takedown defense fairly quickly, kind of like a lifelong wrestler taking to striking. It's the opposite. How do you with those guys is just because they're so good at footwork, or how do you establish the lifelong Muay Thai guys really taking to the at least avoiding takedowns better than most would have expected?
Yeah, well, like a Cosmo Alexander went into MMA late in his Muay Thai career. I mean, he's a multiple-time world champion and it, horrifying power. I mean, he wrecked people.
Just ask Sage Northcutt how horrifying that power.
Yeah, he fractured his literally everything. Just terrifying striker. But anyway, I think at the same time, if we look at Alex Pereira, who's legendary in Muay Thai and of course now in the UFC, it's got to come down to my balance as his opponent. How good am I at striking? I'm never going to be as good as Alex Pereira at striking if I spent my whole life wrestling. Yeah. But I can be good enough to make him respected a little bit, to open up his defense to get takedowns. And from what I've observed of Alex Pereira on the ground, he's gotten himself in trouble when taken down by people. People didn't necessarily capitalize all that well on it. But I think that, look, from the UFC side of things, if I want somebody to be a star and he's mostly a striker, has good grappling, but not world class, how do I match him up to best highlight and make for exciting main cards and fights? This is about entertainment. We have to be honest with that. So we have to give props to the UFC for proper matchmaking, building names the way they have, and not getting Alex Pereira beat by a guy who might be a terrifying wrestler and submission guy if he gets a hold of, because Alex is not an expert at stopping takedowns. Like if you get his legs, you have a pretty high propensity for getting takedowns from what I've seen. It's just people are like Strickland went out and boxed with one of the most terrifying human beings. That's Strickland's fault for doing that.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not win the world title, get paid, and then be entertaining if you want. Right.
Yeah.
But going out, that would be like me going out and saying I'm going to out wrestle an Olympic gold medalist in an MMA match. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, got to play the odds, bro. Got to be the house. Play the odds.
It's a strategy game, and
if you're about winning, I know that, and the entertainment side of things, things have leaned toward entertainment, of course. Fine, yeah, you got to put asses in seats, but ultimately, if I'm the athlete, I'm there to win. I'm there to win a world title. I'm there to get paid, and I can be entertaining after I've made my money and I'm can retire or whatever. So anyway, enough of that. Let's move on to the fight card here for April 25th. Aljamain Sterling and Yusuf Zalal, our main event of the evening. But we'll start at the bottom of the card. Number 34 ranked Max Griffin against unranked Victor Valenzuela. You got one guy that's 0-1 in the Contender Series going up against the guy that's 8-10. Griffin's 8-10 in the UFC. It's like a veteran versus a guy that couldn't even win in the Contender Series. Little odd. 13-4 for Valenzuela, 20-12 overall record for Griffin. Both guys have a good number of knockouts. Both guys identical in the submission category. 2 wins, 1 loss, and it looks like Valenzuela has, I guess, more of the momentum at 4-1 in his last 5. How do you break this fight down?
Well, this is a weird fight, Pat. This is a fine card, but compared to other cards, it's a little more watered down, like the UFC Apex cards usually are. This is a training facility that holds max, I think, 200 people. So they invite the VIPs, the Mark Zuckerbergs, and they essentially fight for a bunch of rich people, and it isn't the best fight. So this is the opening card. It seems like nobody's betting on it. I agree with you. I think Griffin should be the favorite here, but people haven't really bet it. Valenzuela opens up at -145 on Caesars. as a small favorite. Now he's minus 140. There's been no major steam on any sports book, Pat, and I'm a little surprised Max Griffin hasn't gotten more love. I think he would have been bet closer to favorite status. Maybe people just, this is the first fight of the card. People have been spoiled of some great fight cards, and they're not going crazy betting it. Give me Max Griffin here at plus 118. Like you said, you've got a UFC veteran against the guy that couldn't even win on Contender Series, Pat Miletich. So the line's certainly not moving in Valenzuela's favor. Give me Griffin here, half unit bet, plus money. I like it.
Yeah, so and Max Griffin's obviously had a tougher road to get to the, batting less than 500 record in the UFC, and overall, he's 20-12, which you're not burning up the record books at 20-12, but nonetheless, he's had a lot of tough fights. Went into the UFC. I mean, you think about it, all but 2 of his losses came in the UFC, and he had 12 wins going into the UFC. He had more experience than most people at this point that go into the UFC. But anyway, he's had a tougher road. Quality of opponents for Valenzuela has not been there. Therefore, I agree with you, and I would say that as the underdog, Max Griffin for me would be who I would bet on.
Yeah, and to our viewers, I love how almost every breakdown Miletich brings up strength of schedule, because a lot of people don't realize how much it matters. The NFL draft's opening round was yesterday. That's the thing I bet the most money on every single year. That is the event. If the NFL
Wait a minute, hold on a second. You bet on the draft?
Oh yeah, brother. I bet probably a lot. It's my highest volume day of the year, and that was yesterday, the first round, and the round where most of the betting takes place. It's crazy. You're betting stuff like this wide receiver from Arizona goes under or over pick number 7.5. And so you're instead of watching my TV being like, oh, I really need them to score this touchdown, or I really need him to get this, I really need him to finish off this guillotine choke. You're betting on Roger Goodell announcing picks, but it's quite profitable if you know what you're doing. And I just thinking of you talking about strength of schedule. When you get a guy who got like 15 sacks and he was just a stud, but he went to like South Middle Texas University for the deaf, dumb, and blind, and it's like, him getting 16 sacks isn't the same as this guy on Alabama who's playing the best of the best every single week, or Iowa who only has 6 or 7 sacks. Well, he's going up against much better competition, and so that reminded me of that last night as I'm breaking down NFL draft prospects.
Okay,
So, yeah.
and I'll just do this. I want to sidetrack us just for a moment.
Yeah.
We'll get back into the card and your picks here really
Yeah.
quick. But are you aware? Because I thought I'm just going to look this up. Is there betting on world crises, calamities, and events taking place? And there actually is. You can actually bet like how likely an EMP is to happen in the next year or whatever. Cyber attacks, nuclear attack, earthquakes, like all this crazy stuff. And I was digging into this and I go, wow, I wonder who's actually betting on this stuff. And giving the fact that I paid attention to geopolitical stuff for quite a while in my life and pay attention to that stuff, I'm thinking, I can see why people bet on it because, well, the nefarious acts of certain people just might make it come true.
Oh, Pat, this is a whole new world. They're called prediction markets.
Yeah.
And you can literally bet on anything. And so that's opened up somewhat of a can of worms. I used it to, what have I used it on? I used it to bet on Trump winning the last election. We won't get into our political leans, but
yeah, because I'm not involved in politics at all.
It seemed to me that Trump was trending at about double your money, and I thought that was too low. And he won by 1 million, so that worked out. I used it to bet the Oscars, like who wins Oscar for Best Picture or Best something. And there's a lot of insider information that's somewhat legal. I will tell you one story, then we'll move back to the fights. So when somebody bet will the president of Venezuela be kidnapped and removed from power within the next month? It was like 50 times your money. Oh, somebody bet it. And they made like $500,000. Good for them, right? Let's do a little bit of digging. They were on the fucking SEAL 16 that kidnapped the Venezuelan president. What are you doing? What are you
Hey
doing?
man, that's called paying for your retirement. That's all that.
Talk about betting on yourself. Whatever the rules are, that man has been charged with multiple crimes and is
Oh, for real?
sentences. Yes.
For real?
Yeah, it's like I don't know where the line is.
Why wouldn't you have somebody else bet for you?
Yeah, but that's somewhat easy to trace too. So, yeah, whatever the rules are, that was breaking them. So that's yeah, it's a crazy world, man. Oh, and one more story, and then I'll get back to it. In Paris, France,
insider betting. Okay.
Oh, in Paris, France, you can pretty much any big city you can bet on what is the highest the temperature will get today. So over in Paris, France, some entrepreneur took a hairdryer and knew where the main thermostat was for the city of Paris, and he put a hairdryer on it for 15 minutes and won his bet that it would get over 82 degrees on a nice fall day in Paris. This is the Wild West, brother. You got to do a deep dive. Talk about that on your conspiracy podcast.
That's beautiful.
That is nuts. And this is all real. Truth is stranger than fiction sometimes, let me tell you.
All right. Well, we're going to have to do a separate episode.
We will. Have me as a guest on Conspiracy Farm, and we'll talk
We'll
about
just do betting. We'll just do betting on the calamities and all that.
I got 10 more crazy stories just like that. These new
predictions. Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. Although I don't do the Conspiracy Farm anymore, but I do a different podcast, the Pat
Gotcha. We'll have me on that one then. Okay.
All right. Okay, let's go on to Talita Alencar versus Julia Palastri. Sorry, number 21 versus number 23. 3-1 Alencar in the UFC, and 2-2 for Palastri. What's your pick, bro?
I'm gonna lean Palastri here. It's not with a good deal of confidence. Okay, line movement opens up at -235 on FanDuel. She's -280 now. Palastri is just kind of a safer fighter. She's out of Europe, where Alencar is more of a risk taker. As long as Palastri just sticks to the game plan. These female fights do always tend to be close. You may be sweating it a little. Palastri could easily win only 2 rounds, but that's all she needs to win. Give me Palastri here, about a unit bet.
Okay, the way I'm looking at it is Alencar, she's done pretty well on the ground. She's got some submissions, 0 KOs, has never been KO'd, 0-0 in that category. Where at the same time, Palastri is 5-0, never been finished on the ground or standing. And she's pretty solid on the ground. She's got 3 victories, no losses by submission with 5 KOs, which makes me lean, and the competition for both of them has been about equal to their record at the time for the most part while they've been coming up. So that makes me lean heavily towards Julia in this fight.
Yeah, I like it. Okay. And also a side bet, if you want to get really crazy, I would maybe do this for half a unit, which is half of 1% of your bankroll. So if your bankroll is $500, this would be a fun $5 bet. Would be fine. Take her to win by decision. It's fight goes to decision is -270. That means if you take Palastri to win by decision, you're essentially doubling your money. I think that's a perfectly fine bet.
Okay, beautiful. All right, moving on to Rodolfo Vieira versus Eric Mecanico. Mecanico has 1 win in the UFC, 2 losses, and Vieira at 6-4. Not stellar records in the UFC, but anymore. I mean, most people don't have necessarily huge winning ratios. A lot of people taking losses in the UFC says a lot about one being brought in maybe too early in their careers, but at the same time, it is what it is. A lot more pressure, a lot more competition, all those different things. But so what say you about this matchup between Vieira and Mecanico?
Yeah, it's never good when you're being selected by the UFC to be the bounce back trampoline for your blue chip prospect, but that's exactly what Rodolfo Vieira has become. He reminds me of a guy coming up in the card who only has 5 MMA wins, but is an amazing ground legend, a jiu-jitsu legend, and so he gets kind of an early pass into the UFC, taking on MMA a little later in life. It was an up and down road for this jiu-jitsu wizard. He certainly won a few fights. He lost a few fights. He's coming off an awful knockout to Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel controlled really every second of that fight. So what are we doing with Rodolfo Vieira now? He's getting much older. Like I said, he started MMA late. I just don't know much about this Eric Mechanico guy. I think that he's such a big favorite. Vieira's such a big favorite is interesting to me because this does not seem like a guy who's trending in the right direction. But the sports books expect him to roll Mechanico here. I am so sorry. Can you talk about this fight and maybe the next fight? I have something I have to deal with. I'll be back in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. So both guys are 3-2, similar records in the last 5 fights, and the decision win and loss category. I mean, Mechanico's done much better. He's undefeated in that category. He's undefeated in the submission category. He's never been beaten by submission. He's batting .500 in the KO TKO, as is Vieira at 1-1. Mechanico 10-4. And the overall record for Vieira at 11-4, almost identical records. It's just Vieira's had a tougher road to get there, obviously, being in the UFC for much longer. So to me, I am leaning towards, the favorite, hard not to. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Vieira. And then, so I'll move up to the next fight, Dumas versus McVeigh. McVeigh looking for his first win in the UFC at 0-2. Dumas 3-4, batting below 500%. And, these guys don't have a massive amount of experience. 14 fights for Dumas. McVeigh has 8 fights. McVeigh's done pretty well in the stand-up, 3-0, got 3 TKOs, never been beaten in that area. 3-2 in submissions. No decisions the last 5 fights, or decision loss, never gone to decision, apologize. At 3-2, McVeigh has a little bit of a lean over Dumas, who's batting less than 500 for his last 5 fights. The competition, when I wrote for McVeigh, it's just blah. It's not super high level, and Dumas is so-so. And so we're looking at minus 178 for McVeigh. He is the favorite, and I lean a little bit, but it's not something that I'm guessing Josh would be betting big money on for sure. And so it's not something that's super appealing to me as well. So for guys out there, if you're going to bet money on McVeigh versus Dumas, I don't know. And I lean a little bit towards McVeigh, but I got to be honest with you, Josh. I'm sitting here looking at these guys, and I don't know. Maybe actually Dumas isn't the favorite, and their competition hasn't been great. At the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's like I don't want to disparage fighters ever, because it takes a unique individual to commit to a life of climbing in the cage. And sorry about the background noise. I'm my clandestine bunker. I've got the door open so you can hear the traffic outside. But anyway, break down Dumas and McVeigh. You probably are going to follow the same path that I did, where it's like burnt Melba toast to a certain extent. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what we're doing with Enrique Dumas here, buddy. I understand letting Tony Ferguson lose 8 UFC fights in a row before you cut him. I understand letting BJ Penn lose 8 UFC fights in a row before we cut him. Does Enrique Dumas have disturbing pictures of Dana White hidden somewhere in his basement or something? This is insane.
There's a chance. There's a chance.
It's definitely a chance. And to add insult to injury, the guy has not only lost 4 or 5 UFC fights in a row. I think he's only won one UFC fight ever, maybe 2. He keeps getting arrested. He's been arrested for some pretty serious stuff. So I don't know what this guy has on the UFC. They're giving him a winnable fight here. They matched him up against that Johnson kid from Cage Digression in his last fight. Now he gets Jackson McVeigh. I like Jackson McVeigh. I'm friends with him on Facebook. He's fought some local guys. Lost both his fights in the UFC, but he's been competitive. This is kind of like a loser goes home situation. It has to be. They obviously see something in Senrique Dumas. You know what? Give me Senrique Dumas here. I don't love the pick at all, but I don't think Jackson McVeigh should be a minus 200 favorite against anyone in the UFC. I'm going to lean Senrique Dumas here. If he blows it for me, I'm never betting on him again. But
Yeah, I think it's a roll of the dice. So I'm just saying McVeigh for the hell of it.
Let's go.
So all right, moving on to Bueno Silva versus Montag. Montag 1-0, and PFL 4-0. So has that momentum, of course, and Bueno Silva, batting less than 500, 5-6 in the UFC, 10-6 overall. I think they're both very good on the ground, at least solid. Neither has been finished on the ground. I mean, we may see, a combat grappling match here.
Yeah, this reminds me kind of the Jasuda Vicious fight last week, where I'm a little surprised that the favorite isn't more of a favorite here. So as I break down this female, and it's probably because what I'm talking about, because it seems like all female fights are close, or the vast majority of them. So even if someone is looking like a big favorite on paper, if they're in like a mid-level women's fight, you can't make them that huge of a favorite, because it seems like these fights are always close. I think similar to Jasuda Vicious, who was a very similar price point to this. She was about minus 390, similar to this minus 420 line. Montague should roll, barring something weird happening. Buena Silva has just always kind of been, I feel like she was maybe lucky to have the success that she did, and now that she's getting older, the wheels are kind of falling off a little bit. I think this is set up for Montague to roll. Talk about line movement. She opens up at minus 350 on Caesars. She's been steamed out to minus 445. That's almost 100 points of movement. I get a little nervous betting big on women's fights, but I like this one quite a bit. Probably a unit and a half bet. I think you can throw Montague in most of your parlays and be happy with the result. But as always, tread a little more carefully on female fights. They tend to be closer than you would think some of the time.
So in referring to what you said about Buena Silva just getting along in the tooth and a little bit, it reminds me of towards the end of my UFC career and then post career, where I had a few fights, in there, when Matt Silva was, Matt Hughes was the world champion at the time. He, took the title back from Carlos Newton. And of course I would still train with them, help them get ready for fights, all that sort of stuff. My body had certainly taken a beating over the years, and I was a little beat up. And Matt used to sing to me, "Old gray mare ain't quite what she used to be, quite what she." And I would just look at him and go, "Man, I'd give anything to go back in time and beat the shit out of you." So,
Did you let anybody in the gym talk to you like that, or did you have to be a world champion to talk to coaches?
oh, they all talk to me like that.
I love it.
Well, I got to, when I was younger and I was training people and fighting, and I was still kind of in my prime, somebody would disparage me during practice, say something, while I was coaching, like, "No, no, F off. I'm not going to do what you say." I'd go, "Okay." So I'd say in the back of my head, "I'm going to go run for a week every day and get my wind back up, and then I'm going to beat the shit out of them." That's
Clip that lead.
so in sparring, then I'd unload on them and get their respect back. Yeah. And then, you know what I mean? So it kind of worked that way until it didn't, Josh. It worked that way until it didn't. So
I hear you.
Yeah. So, all right, moving on to Filo versus Roca. Roca 1-1 in the UFC, 3-2 for Filo, number 17 in the world versus number 43, at least by Tapology's standard. So go ahead and break this down for me and tell me what you're thinking.
Hey, brother, I think Filo might be fighting Durden. It looks like maybe the Rocha fight
Did they switch that over?
got canceled. Yeah.
Okay. All right, help me out with that then. Sorry,
Hey, you helped me
because
out.
I prepared this, a week ago.
Yeah, no, you're good, and I'm sorry for missing that. It looks like maybe about a week ago that was flipped out, but you covered for me quite well, and I will do that for you.
Okay.
Philo started out at minus 800 on Caesars. He's now minus 700. That's obviously not the right direction to go, but I get it. Durden's tough, dude. He's always gonna be in the fight. He excels when the fight gets greasy and maybe not so technical, but he can handle himself both standing and on the ground. No disrespect to Philo, but I don't think he deserves to be minus 700 against anyone in the UFC. I don't think he's proven that. So he's dropped a little bit, but that doesn't set off sirens. Now, if he drops below maybe minus 600, that's a 200-point move in the wrong direction. Right now, I think Fiho should be safe in your parlays, but it's not a lock.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And then moving on to the next fight, Marcus Buchecha against Ryan Spann. I've always liked Spann. You never know what you're going to get right now with Spann over the last few years, of course. But I always got along with him really well. I called several of his fights in the LFA when he was down, kind of bummed out. He lost some kind of pivotal fights, decisions in the LFA, things like that. And we had some pretty good talks. And I just said, bro, you got to, like, you're a good enough athlete. You got all the power. You got the athleticism. You got, you just, like, don't give up. Like, don't give up. And look, he's been a world-class fighter in a very tough weight division. He's 9-6 in the UFC. Not a stellar record in the UFC, but dude, he's always been super tough.
He has. Superman is what they call him. He's got a big Superman tattoo on his chest. Buchecha is interesting. We saw him fight Kennedy in Chekwazoo in his last fight. That actually went to a draw because Kennedy dominated him in the first, got dominated by him in the second, and had a point taken away, and then won the third pretty handily. So that goes to a draw. And Buchecha got into the UFC. He reminds me of the wrestler who was also on this card in Rodolfo Vieira, that he was such a legendary grappler that he gets the pass to the UFC. Starting MMA later in life has certainly been a mixed bag. Ryan Spann is a tough dude. The difference in UFC fights, I think one has 2, the other has like 15 or something. So
I think right now Buchecha is like 0-1 in the UFC, I think.
oh, he's either 0-1 or 1-1, and then
Yeah.
Spann has just been there forever. But we're seeing this a lot more often lately. I think Spann has looked bad because, like you talk about a lot, he's been matched up against great guys.
He's fighting hammers.
Yeah, exactly. And I just haven't seen it out of Buchecha yet. At least when Adolfo Vieira came in, he subbed out cold like the first 2 or 3 guys that he fought. You know what? Give me Spann here at plus 118. The line movement is doing nothing. That usually favors the underdog. Give me Spann here. Fun underdog bet.
All right. I've got Spann as well. I mean, I
Let's
look
do
at a
it.
guy that's 5-2-1. He just one knockout. He's got 4 submissions. Spann's a great athlete on the ground. Spann's gotten 14 submissions, only lost in with 3 submissions as far as I remember. And I see Spann winning this fight. I don't know why the odds are the way they are. It's
I'm
very
with you.
confusing.
I'm with you.
So go Ryan Spann for the win. All right, moving on. Rafa Garcia, Alex Hernandez, 10-7 for Hernandez in the UFC, 18-8 overall, and Garcia at 6-4 in the UFC, 18-4 overall. Very solid competition for Hernandez, decent for Garcia as well. Garcia's got 8 sub wins and has never been submitted in his career. Does he have the edge on the ground against the slippery Hernandez, who I've seen him do some really weird shit on the ground and get out of some goofy stuff? Interesting matchup anyway, so break it down for us.
Yeah, so Alexander Hernandez opens up at minus 160 initially on Caesars. He's been bet down to minus 135. It's interesting here. His last fight was supposed to be with Bobby Green, and it was pulled off the card due to irregular betting activity. And he's back. He's the first guy to kind of beat the charges and get cleared to come back. So here he is. And the thing with Alexander Hernandez is he's just so close to greatness, but can't seem to put it all together. Phenomenal striking, great wrestling, seems to maybe have a little bit of a weak chin, seems to get tired a little bit the farther the fight goes on. But the potential's there. We saw him knock out Chase Hooper brutally. He certainly had his moments. Rafa Garcia is tough, man. Rafa's a
Yeah.
tank. Rafa's not going to get tired. I think that's why we've seen the line move in Rafa's direction. Like I said, Alexander Hernandez opens up at minus 160. He's minus 135 now. You know what? Give me my second underdog in a row. Small bet on Rafa Garcia. I think he's just too tough for Alexander Hernandez. Hernandez has the talent, but the heart just doesn't seem to show up, especially in big fights. Hernandez is good at bullying guys when he's a big favorite. When the fight is close odds, Hernandez seems to wilt.
Yeah, and I remember it stood out to me when he fought Cerrone, which I'm sure it stood out to a lot of people in the press conference. He talked like extremely disparaging.
Called him day drinking Donnie.
Yeah, on top of a lot of other things, and really went out on a limb with some pretty aggressive comments, and I thought, that's probably not going to work out real well. And it didn't. And that can leave a lasting impression on an athlete. Getting wrecked that severely, it can really cause a lot of problems. But Rafa Garcia, I lean towards him. His submission game's very solid. Only been finished once standing up. Hernandez does have dangerous striking, but I'm leaning towards Garcia as well. So moving on. Barcelos versus Martinelli, Montel Jackson. Montel Jackson versus Raoni Barcelos. Raoni Barcelos, when I started calling his fights in the LFA, I thought, man, this guy is like the Brazilian Tasmanian devil. This guy is absolutely a terror. Had a lot of tough fights, but still in the UFC, Barcelos is 10-4. A very respectable record considering the weight class that he's in, and he's fought a lot of tough competition. So Jackson obviously has faced some pretty tough guys along the way as well. And both guys are at 4-1 in their last 5, so kind of similar situations. But how do you break this down?
I'm surprised by the line movement here, and I don't do this often, but
I figured you'd say that.
Yeah, I love it. We're finishing each other's sentences. I don't understand. Montel Jackson, phenomenal striker. Kind of a fun fact on him. He's just a physically blessed guy. Fights at 135, but has bigger hands than Francis Ngannou, was always the fun fact with Montel Jackson. He's going to have a reach advantage in every fight he's in that weight class. He's going to have bigger hands than everyone in that weight class. He's going to be probably faster, quicker than most people in that weight class. Struggles with the takedown defense. Ricky Simone threw him around. Other guys have thrown him around, and he's been susceptible to that. Raoni Barcelos is a great wrestler. Raoni Barcelos cashed as a plus 700 underdog against Peyton Talbot by doing what? Wrestling Peyton Talbot, holding him down. I don't understand why the line isn't going in Raoni's direction. Montel Jackson looked horrific in his last fight. Like he finally gets a main event for the first time in his life, gets plastered, doesn't even show up, gets knocked out bad in the first round. This is a guy who I just give me Raoni here, even though the line isn't moving in his direction. He's plus 160. This is my third underdog in a row. These are mostly fun bets. Don't go crazy. I think Raoni's a very live dog here.
Isn't it incredible? Yes. I mean, my gut's just saying Barcelos.
Yeah.
My gut is really saying Barcelos on this. And what are the odds right now on these guys?
Barcelos is plus 160 is the best odds for him.
Okay. All right. We agree on that one, buddy. All right. Moving on to Adrian Luna Martinelli against Davy Grant. 8-7 in the UFC for Grant. 1-0 contender series for Martinelli. What say you on this matchup? And these guys are getting near the top of the card. Is this I don't know, an unranked guy versus number 30, and I know it's not a giant card. It's not That's not what it's billed to be, but a guy with unranked 17-1 overall, which is a pretty damn good record.
Yeah.
Even though he's fighting guys that were like his opponents were all like batting 500 for the
Yep.
most part.
Yep.
So unproven in my humble opinion. So
Yeah, this is probably the best line movement that I've seen for any fight so far, outside of maybe Montague, but this would rival it math percentage wise. Davy Grant has full on flipped from underdog to favorite. If you want to look over at Caesar Sportsbook, he opened at plus 130. His line has moved to minus 130. That's a pretty big flip, just
yeah,
in the right direction. Davy Grant may very well be my most confident pick of the card. Give me 2 units on Davy Grant, and I think his line keeps moving up.
so you think they're feeding him somebody with a good record, has a good look, maybe build Davy Grant for the future. Is that what you think their strategy is here?
Yeah, it may be a little bit too late to turn Davy Grant into a champion or even a contender, but they like Davy. He's been around forever. He's
Yeah.
become somewhat of a fan favorite, and I think that they're maybe almost feeding the prospect Martinetti to him, and it's a sink or swim. Hey, if you can get past Davy Grant, we will talk, but we wouldn't mind giving our boy Davy Grant a win here too.
I guess that's a better way to look at it because yeah, Grant's been around for a while and now he's
He's a good
gatekeeper
company
position.
guy.
You
Yeah,
think? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Moving on to Dumont versus Edwards. Jocelyn Edwards. Nate Pettit trains her out of Extreme Couture. Nate Pettit, a guy who trained under me for quite a few years when he was young, and then moved out west. And he and Jens Pulver crossed paths at Boise State University. And Nate walked into the wrestling room where Jens was a wrestling team member, Boise State, and was holding tie pads for him. And then he said, I guess at some point, Nate Pettit said, "You need to go see Milicic." And so Jens eventually, and I met Jens at a UFC, his first UFC. He ended up jumping on a train with a couple duffel bags and showed up in Iowa, and that's the rest is history. But
Wow. Wow.
Nate Pettit is a
Wild.
really, really high level
That's
coach.
cool.
Jocelyn Edwards is not necessarily the favorite in this match, but certainly she brings a lot of extreme couture, Nate Pettit, and other coaches' talents to this fight. So it's an interesting matchup. So let me know what you're thinking.
Jocelyn Edwards is interesting. I would still call her a prospect to fight the fact that she has quite a few UFC fights. Jocelyn Edwards has always been seen as a freak athlete, maybe kind of the John Jones of the women's division, but she's kind of raw. And something's happened to Jocelyn Edwards, and they said that it was due to a coaching change. Ever since she got in that couture camp, she's been performing at a much higher level and really maximizing her physical talents. Norma Dumont's solid. This is a tough fight for me, Pat, because I want to jump on the Jocelyn Edwards hype train. I think she's headed in the right direction. I'm just a little afraid Norma Dumont's going to be too much for her here. I think, if anything, the UFC maybe did her a disservice with this matchup, because I think Jocelyn Edwards probably beats most girls in this division. I just don't know if she gets past Norma Dumont. I think it's a bad matchup for her. Give me Dumont, but I'm still on the Edwards train in the future. Dumont's going to be a tough test, though.
No, I agree, and my gut's telling me Jocelyn Edwards, and I look at the overall picture. Jocelyn Edwards never been knocked out. She's only been submitted once, and I don't see Norma Dumont being a terrifying striker at all. So Jocelyn Edwards, if she can stop takedowns in this one, I think has absolutely got a chance to win this fight,
Yeah.
and not only that, potentially score a knockout. So I'm leaning towards Jocelyn Edwards in this one. And Dumont is tough. I give you that, but I think Edwards is, yeah, she's in the right place now
She is.
overall.
She's headed in the
And
right direction. Yeah.
yeah, so All right, let's go on to the main event. Aljamain Sterling versus Yusuf Zalal. I think it's a very exciting fight. I think it's both these guys are very dangerous. Obviously, Aljamain Sterling at 17-5 in the UFC, a massive number of fights and a great record with that many fights as well. A lot of respect for him. Both guys very good on the ground. Zalal's 10-0 submission wise, and Sterling I think has 8 wins and no defeats on the ground as well. Both guys skilled strikers. Zalal has never been knocked out as well, never been finished. So the younger bull coming in against Aljamain Sterling. What's your thoughts?
He is, yeah, good for Yusuf. Zalal had maybe the worst run of matchmaking ever when he came into the UFC. They gave him Ilia Topuria and a couple other killers, and suddenly he goes like 2-2 in the UFC, and he's out of there. He goes back to these smaller promotions, goes I think 5-0, right back in the UFC. Now he's on the verge of a title shot if he can get past Aljamain here. So good for him for believing in himself. I've heard nothing about good things about Yusuf Zalal. He's apparently, people say he's so humble and respectful and just a wonderful person. And so yeah, I mean I'm rooting for him here. Aljamain can be very doing one thing and focused on that one thing, and that's wrestling and grappling. His hands are fine, but he's never going to be an all-world striker. Certainly does lean on that wrestling, and when he was younger, it's like standing in front of an oncoming train, Pat. You know that it's coming, but you still can't stop it. And guys knew that this smothering, suffocating wrestling attack, he had the best backpack in the game. He would move to your back like seamlessly, and before you know it, you're tapping out. Like, age comes to all of us, and so he just doesn't have the dominant wrestling that he used to have. Zalal is very well rounded, and I think if this stays on the feet, Zalal probably pieces him up. Frankly, I'm surprised the line hasn't moved more in Yusuf Zalal's favor. Here's the line movement, Pat. He opens up at minus 146 on FanDuel. He's minus 139 now, so it's essentially the same. Maybe people just aren't betting this card this much. Maybe after they watch this episode of MMA Mobsters, they will go bet on this card, and we will see some lines move up and down.
Right.
But this card just doesn't seem to be popping off the radar. But there are UFC fights happening tomorrow, and Pat and I have identified several lines that were like, why isn't this moving in this direction? So it's going to be an interesting card. I will cap it off with, give me Yusuf Zalal, probably by decision. That's my pick.
All right, I like it. Zalal, now we're going to do the obviously pick of who's going to win, what round, and the
Yes.
way that the fight ends. And you can do the same. Those of you that see this episode, if you enter your pick, again, the name of the winner, how it ends, and the round it ends in, you get free cell saviors
Yes,
and
sir.
Dimene clothing. So I'm going with Yusuf Zalal. I'm going with Yusuf Zalal, third round KO. I'm going out on a limb a little bit here. And yeah, my gut's telling me Yusuf's going to end this fight in the third round KO, TKO. So yeah. So do you think it goes to decision? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it seems that all that Aljamain does is go to decision outside of a couple fluke things like him submitting Corey Sandhagen in 1 minute, Sean O'Malley landing the perfect overhand right to his jaw, finishing him in the second round. Let's look at the odds. Yeah, the odds here are pretty nuts for a 5-round fight. It's minus 180 that fight
Okay.
goes to decision, which for a 5-round fight, especially a men's 5-round fight, is somewhat of a, you don't see it a ton. But so yeah, I will be, it's not a whale play, not a bet everything on it, but I will certainly have interest in betting fight goes to decision, because that seems to be that all Aljamain does. And once again, Pat Militech, the line isn't doing much moving. And I've checked 10 different sports books. The line has been set at the number of minus 180, minus 175. Fight goes all 5 rounds on pretty much every sports book. And it's basically stayed there. So I think I'm getting value if fight goes to decision there.
Okay, wonderful. So again, anybody out there, pick the winner, pick the round, pick the way it ends, and you'll get free cell saviors and Dimene clothing. So we want you to, of course, like, share, and subscribe, please. We'd love it if you'd share this podcast with your friends. And, any closing statements here before we sign off?
Yeah, the line is minus 160 for Zalal. Sterling goes to decision. I was looking at over minus 4.5 rounds, was minus 180. I will throw out there, never bet over 4.5 rounds. It's very rare someone gets finished in the last 2 minutes of a 5-round fight. Just take the better price and bet the fight goes full to decision. I've almost never seen that, work out. So, we have a couple questions in chat. I'm going to hit on those, Pat, then we can sign off. If that's okay with
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Mark Mueller. Mark has, I think, won twice on the pick the winner and the round. Mark, if we haven't sent you anything, reach out.
Yeah. If he can, email, send an email to us. If we could put an email address in the chat, for Mark to send his address, phone number, and email, so I can send that over to the fulfillment center and get that taken care of. That would be wonderful. Holy shit, we've got a winner.
He's won twice in the past month, so
Okay, beautiful.
Good for Mark, and I
I
believe
hope
it's
is Mark betting? Is Mark betting on these?
Oh yeah,
fights?
yeah. He's in fact that's what his question is. I believe it's MMA Mobsters at gmail.com, Mark. So hit that up or okay.
Yep.
All right, beautiful. Our producer, our wonderful, amazing, best in the game producer, Lee, is waiting on your email, Mark. MMA Mobsters at gmail.com. What is your question, Mark Mueller 3734? He says, I love prediction markets. Kalshi is the popular one. They got really popular in the last presidential election and just got a bunch of investments from then on out. And they're doing everything, including sports. So they do offer MMA, UFC lines. It's a little bit different. It's more like buying a stock than it is a sports bet. But it's a fascinating way to do things. He enjoys it. So shout out Mark. And let's see if you can get your third win tomorrow night. Jurston says, I absolutely love the show. Pat, can you briefly talk about a fighter or fighters that you have seen fall short of winning the UFC title and you wish you would have had a chance to coach them because you feel like you could have helped fix a couple things that would have put them over the top?
Well, certainly there's been numerous ones, but I won't give names or anything like that. It's generally there's something missing, whether it's footwork, fundamentals of defense, a balanced game, a balanced attack, a balanced defense, endurance problems. There's numerous different things. Not having tough enough training partners. There's a lot of different variables that go into that. Certainly, yeah, it just varies from. But there's been obviously more also rans almost got theirs than the champions, of course. So yeah, there's been quite a few, and I feel bad for quite a few of them. Some of them just didn't do the work, but others just weren't in the right place, in the right camp, have the right quality of training partners, because all these variables that are in there, you can work as hard as you want, but fight speed stuff, the talent of the people around you, all those things really dictate your reaction timing, your fight IQ, all those things when it comes to the real fights. And not everybody has that blessing, of course. And so, yeah, there's been quite a few. So good question, though.
Good question.
All right. All right. Is that it for the questions?
That is it. And we have, I believe we have UFC next week. You want to do your sign off, Pat, and then I will say who we have for UFC next week.
Go ahead and say who's next week, and then I'll sign off.
All right. We have Jack Della Maddalena is fighting Carlos Prates. It'll be a firefight in the main event next week. And then 2 weeks from now is Khamzat Chimaev, Sean Strickland, pay-per-view. Let's go.
Get ready. Big stuff. All right. For my co-host, Joshua Chauvin, the Chauvin one. And for Lee, our producer, this is Pat Miletich saying so long and good luck to all of you tomorrow if you are wagering.